Welcome back to Literocity. Our district is very fortunate to have national experts visit us throughout the year to help teachers with new and innovative techniques.
Our kids dumping it. Like, we got to make sure that their learning truly becomes a part of them. So whether you can remember this is if you teach in a way that's creative, useful, or emotional, you take your cue, there's a much greater likelihood, brain research shows, that information
One of those is Kim Bearden, the co-founder, executive director, and language arts teacher at the highly acclaimed Ron Clark Academy, an innovative middle school and educator training facility in Atlanta. Over the past 9 years, more than 36,000 educators from around the world have visited Kim's classroom at the Academy and have attended her workshops to learn better ways to engage students, promote academic rigor, and create a climate and culture that promotes success.
I do it when I'm teaching kids sentence structure. Like an independent clause, it's strong, it can stand alone. So my kids will go, ugh! And a subordinate clause, it's weak, it's needy, it's dependent on the independent clause. So they go, ah! So my kids will be going through doing sentences going, and it's hilarious, but they know exactly what they're doing. Like, they'll never get it.
In between her sessions at Pinellas Park High School, she sat down with secondary ELA specialist Jennifer Duda.
Our teachers they're at a point where they're trying to determine what their big rocks are going to be this year and what are the things that are really important for them to focus on. Mm-hmm. So how could you guide us if you had to advise us on perhaps a non-negotiable, something that we just must pay attention to and make a big rock for the year? How could you guide our teachers with that?
Well, the number one thing, it's relationships. Relationships. Now, I mean, you are the teacher, they're the children. I mean, appropriate relationships, but you've got to really seek to understand your children. And if they understand that you care about them, you're invested in them, you believe in them, you're going to push them, you're going to challenge them. But that's because you have high expectations, because you know they can do it. It makes a huge difference. You know, when you have those kids who are not connected, who are allowed to be invisible, those kids that slip through the cracks. So, you know, seek out ways to find out what that child's interests are. You know, what does that child like to do on the weekends? What are some, figure out a way to even weave it into a lesson if you can, a hobby or an interest that that child has. Those little subtle things like that can make a tremendous difference. The other things that we always focus on at our school that I think that all teachers should focus on just the more academic side, it's student engagement, rigor, climate, and culture. Those are our three pillars that we call them. Student engagement, is every child engaged in the learning process? If a child is disengaged, what do you do to re-engage that child, bring them back in? Rigor. Too often I think we try to make things easy. We want kids that not only have the content, but who have grit, right? Who are willing to dig in and really think about things. So make sure that we're not dumbing things down, rather that we're just teaching things in multiple ways so that they can get the hard content. And then that climate and culture. And it's a mixture. You know, our school is really strict, but there's passion, there's enthusiasm, there's joy. You have to have a balance between those two things. A greater kind of power is when you empower others. Now think about this. When you empower others, the exponential ripple effect goes on forever. Like, long after I've left this earth, and one day I will, the people that I have uplifted, they will uplift others, they will uplift others. The exponential ripple effect will go on and on.
So there are a couple of things actually that you just discussed that are huge rocks for us as a district. One of those things is culturally responsive instruction, and the other is growth mindset. And growth mindset as it regards to our students, but also in relation to ourselves. So what are some things that you've learned as you've kind of explored those areas, and how have those areas impacted your work with children and with teachers?
Well, even I think with growth mindset, when we look at children, I think sometimes we get frustrated, we get overwhelmed, we're trying to figure out ways to help them, and I think that sometimes as teachers we have a fixed mindset about that they're going to be that kind of kid forever, right? Like, what I mean by that is some of the most amazing adults I know, like the ones who have changed the world, who have done the most, who have accomplished the greatest things, they were a hot mess when they were still in school, right? I mean, and what it took was somebody helping them, molding them, guiding them with what they have. But sometimes that part of a child that makes them a little bit challenging or a little bit harder, that actually could be that piece of that child, if guided in the right way, that could make them the most magnificent human being. I mean, the one who's really going to leave a mark upon the world. So I think that when we look at kids, you can't just see who they are. You have to believe in what they can become. despite whatever circumstances they're in, despite the things that are happening, when you look at them, you really have to see that there could be such greatness within that child. There are areas of just incredible magnificence. That child has a purpose, and you've got to try to figure out how to pull it out. So that's a big thing with the way that I see kids.
We here, in Pinellas, we've been talking a great deal about, and improving our own craft individually, so in isolation. But one of the things that we also recognize is that, as a teaching team, we're only as good as our weakest link. Mm-hmm. And, it's never going to benefit a school to have one rock star teacher who believes these things. We have to have teams of teachers. That's right, who are sharing and have the open doors that you were talking about in your presentation this morning. What are the things that we can be thinking about in terms of building a climate in which we're collegially sharing ideas and really kind of open to observing and critiquing one another to grow better?
Well, Ron Clark, who I started the school with, we always tell our staff, we're the administrators in addition to teaching. I teach every day, but I'm also one of the administrators. We always tell our staff that the greatest thing that they can do first is this. Now, don't get me wrong, we're about kids at our school. Kids come first. But if we are able to do this, it gives us the strength to be able to do this. And so in that means that we're constantly finding ways to lift each other up. Now, it doesn't just happen. Just like they'll say, like a healthy marriage, you have to work on it, right? Yes. So we actually set aside time for those discussions during our meeting times about how can we better serve each other? Like, how are we going to treat each other? How do we make sure? Because here's the thing. Mm-hmm. We tell kids in schools all the time, we're a family. Teachers use that all the time. We say it too, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're going to tell kids you're a family, then you best be mindful. You must be aware that you need to be able to model for them what a healthy family looks like. See, because for some of your kids, when you say we're a family, unfortunately, it's heartbreaking, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. And so we as the adults have to model that. And what that means is that, I care about you. I got your back. I want what's best for you. Doesn't mean we have to be best friends. We don't have to hang out every minute, right? But collectively, I'm here for you, and I don't want anybody else to mess with you. I want to do what it takes, right? And so the language you'll hear our staff often saying is, what you need? Do you need a minute? You know what? I can do this in a minute. Let me take care of you. I got your back. And as a result, it's created this climate where we really do know we're in this together. So when something is tough, it doesn't feel as heavy when you know that you've got a collective group of people who are trying to bear the weight of it.
So are any of these things that I know you're here for a session today, right. And thank you for being here, by the way, with us all day long. Are any of these things that you've been talking about in your sessions? What are some of the things that you've been sharing with our teachers today? And I know that they're also receiving one of your books. Yes. Today as well, and I'm sure there are some takeaways in that book that you would like to share with us as well.
Well, the book is interesting because the book is called Crash Course of Life Lessons my students taught me, and it really does pull in a lot of the concepts from the keynote, but I tell the concepts or get them across through the stories of actual things that happen in my classroom. So it's kind of a merge of both my workshop today and my keynote. But it really talks about when things are rough and difficult. I've been in the middle of a lesson where I've done some of the cool strategies and things, but it's something that a kid said, it's just the way that they teach me about life and love and magic and play and joy and all those kind of resilience and optimism, and as well as forgiveness and all those kinds of things. And so it's how students have really helped me to become a better human being. That's what the book is about. In the workshop, it's a lot about engaging strategies, but also, so I talked about how in my classroom I use a lot of music, I use a lot of movement, and I sprinkle it with a little bit of magic. And I'm tough and I'm hard, but by doing that, the kids are more willing to dig in and do the difficult content because there's creativity, there's joy, and so I teach them a little bit about how I use music and the movement things, but I also talk to them a little bit about, you could give 30 teachers the exact same lesson plan, and it could be a flawless lesson plan. But when you take that lesson plan, how do you deliver it? And so I spent a little bit of time talking to them about the way we as teachers, the way that we speak, the way that we move, some tips for the way that you even use hand gestures and how you create a sense of urgency, just some of those little things about even just basic presentation skills, still doing it with their own style, their own personality, but some tips that maybe they hadn't considered before to help them really engage students even more.
So before we began today, you told me that you've been in a different state every day. And so you have this incredible perspective that, of course, the folks who are here working hard in Pinellas, we just don't have. And I just wonder if you could speak to some of the things that you're seeing in schools across the country and how you're feeling about the direction that we're going right now.
Yeah, so I am fortunate that I get to interact with thousands of educators. You know, they come to our school, first of all, so like last year alone, 14,000 teachers actually came into our building. So I got to hear from them their stories. But during the summer when I'm not teaching, I do get to go visit their schools and visit their districts and talk to them. And so the encouraging thing is that there are spectacular teachers everywhere. I mean, there are teachers who will come up to me and tell me stories that just make my heart sing, you know, about work they've been doing, about kids that they've reached, about just teachers who are moved to tears just because they have such a love for this profession. I taught a teacher the other day, she'd been teaching for 42 years, and I'm telling you would have thought she was a first-year teacher because just her face was just so full of delight because she couldn't wait to get back in and be with those kids. So we hear so much about the negativity in teaching and that there's poor teachers, but I want to rest assured there are phenomenal teachers out there who are pouring into it. When I think about things that concern me or worry me, I believe that there's an art and a science to teaching. And we know more about the science of teaching than ever before, and that's important. How do you use data to drive instruction? How does the brain work? All of these things, and I'm a proponent. Those are important things. But my fear, I've been teaching for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of things come and a lot of things go. Heck, if you've been teaching for 2 years, you've seen a lot of things come and go, right? But my fear is that we're only focusing on the science of teaching and we're forgetting about the artistry. And to me, the artistry is where the passion lies, right? Those teachers who are artists, they're the ones who have kids who lie in bed at night and go, I can't wait, what's going to happen tomorrow? What's he going to do in my class? And it might not even be a subject that they really would have normally been drawn to, but because they're in the presence of that master teacher, they cannot wait to learn. I want to create kids who can't wait to learn. I want my 8th graders, when they lie in bed at night, to go, I can't wait to go to school tomorrow. Kindergartners feel that way, but then somehow we squash the joy out of kids as they get older. Right. If they love to learn, they're going to continue to create. They're going to continue to affect the world in great ways. Because, the reality is, we all know, there's things that I'm teaching, but there's things that don't even exist yet in our minds that our kids are going to be doing for professions one day. So if I can teach them to love to learn and to love to think, well, that's the greatest gift that I can give them.
But inevitably, somebody in here, you're going to have a great lesson, and then you're going to walk to your computer after class, and there's going to be that crazy email from that crazy mama in all capital letters, right? And it starts to steal your joy. Or you got 5 minutes, and you're like, I got to run off my test, but I really got to go to the bathroom. I think I can do it both. And so then you run down to the copy machine, and somebody has left a jam in the copy machine. Doesn't that make you crazy, right? So when those things happen, what it does is it makes you think, well, this is my real world, right? And it just starts to chip away at the joy, and you start to feel small again. When that happens, you must stop. You must check yourself, and you must remind yourself, this doesn't define me. This defines me. That child I helped this morning, that kid that I just talked to at lunch, that class I'm about to teach, by helping those kids, not only am I affecting those kids, I'm affecting the lives of millions. And so for that, my life has purpose, my life has power, and my life has significance. Thank you.
When we come back, we kick off a new elementary reading program designed to unite our community. Literocity returns in a moment.